I had somebody ask for new carpet, and the carpet wasn't worn. They just didn't like the color. I'm like, wow, your agent has failed you.
Yeah.
Because it's not about, we're not doing your remodel.
Yeah.
Right? We're not paying for your cosmetic wishes. This is for repair. This is for, hey, the sellers usually don't even know. Like there's a little leak in the roof. Maybe the tar, the paper, the felt under the tiles has worn because there's two tiles that cracked that you couldn't see and you weren't aware of.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Brandon Ducharme is an investment advisor representative of and offers investment advisory services through SCF Investment Advisors Incorporated, an SEC registered investment advisor, 10150 Meanly Drive, first floor, San Diego, California, 92131, 800-955-2517, www.scfsecurities.com. SCF Investment Advisors Incorporated and Ducharme Wealth Management are separate entities. The information in this podcast is current at the time of recording. It is based upon sources and data believed to be accurate and reliable. The information, opinions, and forward-looking statements expressed herein are subject to change without notice. Moreover, all comments and opinions voiced herein are for informational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations and should not be interpreted as such. Further, the opinions expressed are Brandon Ducharme's and his guests and do not reflect the views and opinions of SCF Investment Advisors or any of its affiliates. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what is appropriate for you, consult your financial professional. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax or legal advice. Ducharme Wealth Management and SCF Investment Advisors do not provide legal or tax advice. These services are provided by separate entities. The guest speakers featured in this podcast are not affiliated with SCF Investment Advisors, nor are they affiliated with Ducharme Wealth Management unless otherwise indicated.
Hey guys, I'm joined today by Michelle Evans. She is one of the real estate agents locally in my county here in Washington County. I have a lot of professional respect for Michelle and the work that she does. I've seen her work very hard for people. And so I brought her in today to just have a quick conversation about what people should expect from their buy-side real estate agent in a transaction, and just talking about some of the things and challenges that people face. So I hope you enjoy the conversation and get something out of it. If there's something we missed, go ahead and let us know. We'll bring her back in to answer some more questions. I have a very, and I'm going to preface this by saying there's no advice that's for everyone. Like there's nothing out there that is just like everyone should do this one thing.
Yep.
If you hear that, red flag, run the other way. But I do think that I do believe, and I feel I have pretty good math to justify this opinion. For most people, when they're, ready and able to buy a home financially, it is one of the greatest things that they can probably do for their long-term financial future.
Absolutely.
So I'm a big advocate of home ownership, especially if you have the stability in your life to make it happen, right? Now, there's a right way to do things, there's a wrong way to do things. But one of the things that's super pivotal about buying a home is that you can't buy a home without going through a real estate transaction and buying the home.
That's right.
Right? I guess the caveats, if someone gives it to you and they just deed it over to you and you didn't even know it happened or something, maybe. But
when does that happen?
Yeah, if anyone out there wants to give me some real estate for free, I might be willing to take it.
I'm open.
I'm open to the conversation, message me.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that goes into it. And when I bought my first home, I was a little bit timid about the process.
Yeah.
I didn't know who to talk to. How to do all the right due diligence. I thought I kind of knew some different things, like, you get a home inspection, you look up and see if there's any, registered sex offenders as neighbors, you know what I mean? Like there's some basic things, but how do you really read the home inspection? And it started making me nervous. And then I always had, what if I have these change of life circumstances and I have to move, and then how do you sell a home? And so I had all these concerns and didn't have the right foundational education.
Right.
And in hindsight, like those things in my life were pretty valid, particularly early on. I didn't have a super stable career. And then I was in the military, active duty, and you move around and you kind of don't know what's always going on. And so when I did buy a home, it was great. It was a good experience. I learned a lot, and that actually launched my at the time what was, going to be my real estate career for a time.
Yeah.
And what I feel passionate about is having something out there or a way to articulate to people the process of how to buy a home. And I think that's quite simple, right? Like you can put a 5-step plan on paper and say, you get your credit fixed, you talk to a mortgage lender, you hire an agent, you look at homes and you close on the deal. You close on a deal.
Little oversimplification, but for sure.
But there's so much more. There's so much more nuance to it, and I think the value. It is a very big transaction, and it can be an all or nothing thing for people's net worth, right? It can make all the difference, positive or negative.
Yeah,
for
it's
people.
the biggest investment for most people. Not too many Donald Trumps walking around.
And even if it's not the biggest investment, it is probably the highest leveraged investment people are going to make.
Yes.
Which means you can make the biggest return or lose it all.
Right. You can make some pretty critical mistakes.
And little mistakes in this arena can have big consequences.
Absolutely.
So I do also believe that having a good buyer's, representative or buy side specialist, right? Like in my industry, what's interesting is we'll call that, buy side, when you're looking at buying investments, somebody that specializes in buying investments.
Yeah.
But it is somebody that's going to have an agency relationship to their client, which is important because people hear terms like insurance agent a lot. But an insurance agent is an agent of the insurance company. They represent the insurance company.
Right.
A real estate agent has an agency relationship to the client they're representing, not to, right? Like your agency relationship isn't to Keller Williams.
Right.
It's
to that client.
Keller Williams is the agent acting on behalf of the client. So it's a little bit confusing that way, I think, for some people, but a real estate agent isn't there to, in my opinion, sell you a home.
Not at all.
They're there to consult and represent you through the process of buying a home.
That's right.
It's
consultation.
And it's a nuanced difference, but it is a significant difference to understand that difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what's critical and that what most people pass by is having a consultation with the buyer's agent where you learn all of those things. You as a first-time home buyer, you kind of knew, but you probably were a little, nervous about it. You weren't sure about it. And so sitting in the office, I think a lot of people just want to bypass that process and just go start looking at homes, right? They just want to go right to it. But if you sit down and go through, a good buyer's agent is going to have that process outlined. Like one of the pages in my buyer packet, I send them with a resource packet. Yeah. And one of those is the steps of buying a home. In fact, I even put a little checkbox by it because one guy along the way through the years said, I just stuck that on my fridge with a magnet and I just checked it off as we went through the process. And I was like, yeah, of course. So I put a little check boxes by it and I put it in their packet and they can use it that way or not. It's up to them. But when you're nervous and you wake up at 2 a.m. and you're like, what are we doing? Because you're in flux, everything's changing when you're buying a home. Yeah. Lots of change. So there it is. So you can see what the process is. What do I do? What does the title person do? What does the lender do? Understanding the process right from the get-go, I think would eliminate a lot of nervousness. Right? It would have answered a lot of questions for you because you had the basic idea, but going into the details, I think would have given you a lot of comfort. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially as a younger person.
Especially your first time through. Yeah. How does this all work? What do we all do? And what's the best loan? I think a lot of people, especially first-time home buyers, don't realize how many loan products there are on the market. Yeah. And to really vet that and find out what are the pros and cons of each one and to sit down with a lender right from the get-go. Yeah. That's step number one, really, is to not start with the agent, but to start with the lender. Because what can you afford? What loan are you going to use and why? You're a vet, so a VA loan is the best product on the market. Somebody may not know that. It's pretty incredible, and maybe somebody getting into a home for the first time and they just have a little bit of cash set aside. Maybe that Utah home loan is the best way to go to get them into, especially now with interest rates so high, get into the home buying. It's like standing on the bank of the river and you got to get into that fast rushing water. You just got to make that move. And then once you're in it, once you've bought a home, it's just kind of this built-in moneymaker for you. right? The equity
Hopefully.
that you're building. Yeah, hopefully in most situations,
Yeah.
unless the market crashes or does something crazy like it did in '08.
Well, I think there's what I see on my end of this equation now, right?
Yeah.
As being in like the wealth management space, and I do a fair amount of talking younger people through getting started with stuff, and I'm always happy to give my help and guidance to people.
Sure.
Give a little bit of my time to get them going in the right direction, and usually the conversation goes towards like, like take buying a home serious, right? And don't put it off too long. Right. Sometimes people get nervous, but you really should get serious about it sooner than later.
Right.
And at least understanding your options so you can fully understand if it's what's best for you or not.
Right.
But, and where was I going with that? I'm sort of losing my track. Oh yeah. What I hear is people say, well, we're saving up to buy a home. And I'll ask them like, well, tell me more about what that means. And they seem to have either a percentage down payment or a fixed number in their head that they want to put as a down payment.
Mm-hmm.
And from a financial standpoint, what I try to help them understand is, if you are going to cross the 20% down barrier and you feel interest rates are high and, like you're going to avoid maybe PMI costs or certain closing costs and you don't want to pay that interest rate anyways, and you have the cash available, that could all make sense. But saying, well, we're just, 10% is some magical threshold where we feel comfortable. We want to try to put some additional math to that. Mm-hmm. And here's why. If you put 10% down on, say, a $400,000 home, right? You put $40,000 down.
Right. And
so, the home's worth $360, or you have a mortgage for $360, home's worth $400. You theoretically have the $40,000. You didn't spend it. It's just in equity in the home. But if the market dips just a couple of percent, and now the home's say worth $390 or something. And because we're in a tough economic spot, you lose your job or whatever. There's some transition in life, right? You can't go back to the bank typically and say, well, I want to get money out on a HELOC. They'll say, well, you don't have a high enough loan to value.
Right.
And so in those first couple of years, you actually have the highest risk in a real estate deal because you have, the equity hasn't really had the time to do the magic growth yet. Mm-hmm. And paying down principal doesn't really go that fast, right? It's the magic is in the growth of the equity of the home.
Correct.
And so what I'll actually talk to people is, if you think 10% down is a magic number because that's where you feel comfortable, you probably feel better off with looking at maybe an FHA program that maybe you can do like a 3.5% down, keep 6.5% liquidity on the sidelines, because you can borrow the money from yourself if you lose your job for a couple months and still make the mortgage payment, or you can pay for the water heater that goes out or the HVAC or all these other things that people say, well, these are all the downsides of home ownership. Mm-hmm. Well, if you plan the liquidity right, it starts to take a lot of risk off the table so that you can get past those first couple of years to a point where the magic of the equity growth has hopefully happened. Now there's no guarantee, right? Like real estate, I always say, is not a magic asset class that just goes, what I call the LLURs, right? The lower left to upper rights, just goes up. Yeah. There's nothing, it's not, right? They have pullbacks just like anything else.
Not predictable.
You just, over time, over a long enough period of time, you can feel relatively comfortable that there's a high probability that it would work out in your favor.
Absolutely.
As a homeowner.
But this speaks to how important it is to nail that financial piece up front, because I think everybody's situation is so specialized to them. What is their situation? How long do they intend to be in the home? Yeah. That's pretty critical. Is this a stepping stone to getting to a home? Or some of those questions need to be asked and vetted so that, like you say, maybe they don't want to put 10% down. Maybe they want to do the FHA or the Utah home loan, or and I think a good mortgage lender or finance person is going to guide them through that. Yeah. And once they know that, then, myself as a realtor, I don't need to know all of that personal financial information. All I need to know is, what did you decide with the finance person? What did you decide? Sure. And then what loan are we going to use and why? Yeah. Because a lot of times a lender will say they are comfortable at 400, but they could go to 450. Sure. So I'm not trying to take advantage of that as an agent, but I know if we find the perfect thing at 415,
it's worth a conversation.
It's worth a conversation. Exactly.
It's worth a conversation, and maybe it's worth writing an offer.
Correct. It might be add a couple years to how long they're going to be in it. because of what it offers.
I guess what my point in that was, you can find a listing for 415, but that's just the opening negotiation point.
Exactly.
Right? So real estate is very negotiable. Price, terms, the whole way around. Everything is like it. When I think about real estate, seriously, every point of real estate is negotiable, like up to and including you could say, I'll buy the home if you put new toilet seats on every toilet in the house, right? Like you can negotiate whatever you want. You could say, I want this fridge stocked with Mountain Dew when I close. It's like, hey, look, that'd be silly, but you could add,
that's right.
You could get it in the contract.
And it's about to be more negotiable because of the NAR settlement that's coming down the pike.
Yeah.
As far as commissions go.
Yeah. And I think I think that's why it's a timely discussion about what is the value and what does a buyer's agent do for you? What does a good buy-side agent do for you? I don't really care to talk too much about the NAR settlement right now and its specifics.
No, it's all good. I just meant as far as negotiating goes.
Yeah, it's always negotiable. So I think just what we can highlight on that and then kind of move forward is when you hire a buy-side agent, you have the ability to have a critical conversation with them and say, I'd like to employ you for your services and, here's what I'm willing to pay. And that agent might say, that's fine if you're willing to pay me that. Or they might say, that's not, I'm a professional and my time's worth more or whatever. And you got to find an agent that you feel comfortable is going to deliver the service for what you're paying for, right?
Right.
A buy-side agent is not a free service. No one should be disillusioned that it is a free service.
No.
But
it's not a hobby.
Yeah, it is not a hobby. It is work. So let's talk about what I want to focus on is let's talk about the work that it is on a buy side, right? So let's just walk through that. So you have someone that calls you up. Hey, Michelle, my friend said you are a real estate agent that could help me buy a home. And we're thinking about buying a home. Can we, and hopefully I believe your process is great. Why don't you come in for a consultation?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So, they come sit down at, your office with you or whatever. And what is that, what's covered in that first consultation? What are the kind of things that
we're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of alluding to before, I have a buyer packet because I feel like I know we're not in the age of paper anymore, so I can certainly send it to them electronically as well. But that buyer packet is a great resource with a lot of information because we're kind of fire hosing people when we're talking and we're just meeting. And so, we're not retaining everything that we're hearing. So I'm sending them home with a resource of information. It's got we talked about before, it's got the buying process lined out, bullet pointed out, so they know what to expect. It's got, I put in 2 lenders that I recommend, 2 mortgage lenders, and not because they're my buddies, but because they get the highest marks back from all of my past clients, right? I know that these 2 people can deliver.
Sure.
They are going to be great prices, great communication, great service. They're going to get it done.
Yeah.
And then a home warranty. We talk about what a home warranty is. A lot of people don't know. I didn't know before I got into real estate. I'd never had a home warranty.
Sure.
And people get it mixed up with homeowners insurance.
Yeah.
Like what's the difference, So we talk about that. So I talk about the resources that are in the packet for just a minute. And not necessarily in this order, but that's one of the things that I do in that consultation. I'm like, here's some information to take with you. I also have a list of contractors and vendors and, because people call me all the time because we do use them all the time, all kinds of contractors and vendors. I mean, even people call me and say, hey, where's the best Thai restaurant,
Sure.
And because we are pretty connected, realtors are, great networkers. So I've got a lot of information in that packet, but then I shut up, if you can believe it, and I take notes about what their goals are. What do they want? What do they want in a home? And what is a want versus a need? Yeah. And, in a perfect world, when would they like to move? Do they have a rent in place? Are they living with family? Are they getting married? They're combining, 2 apartments. Like what's the situation? So I let them do a lot of talking. So we get it out on the table because what we need to do is create a strategy to move forward. Yeah. Like their timeline, their wants, their needs. We're here to facilitate that. Yeah. Not we don't run the show. They drive the bus. We're here to listen. We're here to, to offer services however we can.
Yeah.
And then another thing we do is we'll set up a personalized search on the multiple listing service.
Okay.
So depending on how soon they want to do this, sometimes people are a year out. Sometimes they're right now, got to buy something this weekend.
Sure.
So, in that case, we're probably not going to set up a search. We're going to be looking together and going out immediately if they've got a weekend to do it. But for most people, we're going to be looking up at the computer screen. We're going to be setting up a personalized search. And then they're right there to tell me, if I say, well, what's the minimum square footage of a home? And sometimes if it's a new home buyer, they don't have a concept of what that is, so I'll say, let's go look at a few and get an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can kind of see what's out there and what you can get for your money. And so sometimes we'll come back and tweak that search, depending on what they experience or what they know, or they just need a certain area. Sometimes I've had policemen, for example, that need to be in their city, right?
Yeah.
If they can't be outside that city or outside a certain
it's part of their employment contract.
Yes, mm-hmm. Exactly. So we have to honor that. So we're looking at all of those things and setting up a timeline and a strategy. A lot of times I'll have couples that will say, the wife is home, the husband is at work. So she's going to go look at properties. Mm-hmm. And when she gets her top 2 or 3, then we're going to go in the evening when he can go, or a Saturday.
Go together.
And go together.
Yeah.
That's fine. There's all kinds of strategies we can employ to do that. We're going to look at, is new construction a possibility for you?
Okay.
We're going to talk about for sale by owners. How does that whole thing work? That's confusing for people. Mm-hmm. And go through the process. So we're just going to answer any questions that they have, and walk through the process, walk through a strategy, set up a search so that we're ready to go from that point.
Yeah.
And then, and that's where I usually determine, have you already spoken to a mortgage lender? Is that something we need to do? Sometimes we can do it right there. We can just get them right on the phone, and sometimes I'll step out because, I want to be really careful about people's privacy and their financial situation, because it's really none of my business. It's not an agent's business as much as they want to share as it pertains to what we're doing. Yeah. But otherwise, it's none of our business. So as long as I know the parameters of the finances, then we're off to the races.
Yeah.
So that's what happens in that consultation. And it can go, typically there may be 45 minutes. I've had some go a couple hours. It's up to the people, what questions they have, what concerns they have, how long they want to be there.
Yeah.
So that's what we do.
So technology has made the searching of homes a lot easier.
So much.
I think sometimes, really good agents I've seen actually will spend a lot of time looking for stuff that's not on the market for clients.
Oh, yes.
And that is a whole skill set in and of itself that we probably could do a whole podcast episode on.
Yeah, we could.
I've seen the hours and hours and hours that it takes to find those unique deals, mm-hmm. the unique properties that are not on, listed on the market, and you're calling people asking if they want to sell their home because it would be a good fit, or if they they're doing it for sale by owner and it's not listed anywhere, but you found it in, the classified newspaper, or whatever. And
or
it's
through the grapevine.
Yeah, through the grapevine.
Many ways to hear about it.
You got a tip from somebody that somebody might be thinking about selling a property soon, whatever it might be. There's all kinds of stuff and ways to find stuff off market. Right. And good buyers agents, I think, wrap that in the search, right? So there's potential value in the search. And then, the MLS does make a lot of it easy though. And I think that's where sometimes people think, well, what do I need a real estate agent for? I can just, hop on Zillow. The MLS puts all the homes up onto Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com or any of these big real estate sites people use. Yeah. And I'll find my own home.
Find it myself.
I'll find my own home. What do I need a real, so people have, I think a lot of times, and I thought this, right? Mm-hmm. The real estate agent job was to find you the home. Right. And after I had worked in the industry for a period of time, what I really came to realize was, I felt like when I was representing clients, the value that I provided was really never in finding the home. That wasn't my unique value proposition. Right. My unique value proposition was more in handling the negotiations, managing the deal, managing timelines, like more of a project management, a business negotiation, and the due diligence items, right?
Right. Very much so. Well, and the thing is I think part of the reason why that's confusing is that's how it used to be before the internet.
Yeah.
You went to the realtor and they found the home. They knew the homes. They had books. They were in the know, going to all the meetings and the broker opens and all of that to find the home.
Yeah.
And then the contract. I mean, I looked at my parents' house contract.
Purchase contract.
2 pages. I about fell over.
It's like a bill of sale.
Oh my gosh. It was so great. And then now it's just completely flipped with the, with the internet. And now finding a home is like the 2-page contract. It's nothing. Anybody could find it, if it's on the internet.
Yeah.
But it's the process now that is can be a lot of entanglements and a lot of real scary things.
Yeah.
Like you say, the due diligence. I think that's a key piece is navigating through that due diligence. Because there's no house that's perfect, even new construction.
Yeah.
I mean, we do a home inspection, and then I just turn over that summary page to the general contractor and go, fix all of that.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens in a used home. You don't just turn that page over.
Fix it all.
Because that's not what it's for or about, right? Yep. So I don't think people understand that. They're like, well, you should make it as perfect as you can. Well, the Utah real estate purchase contract says as is. So what we're negotiating is any showstoppers.
Yeah.
Anything that's a problem, anything that needs repair.
Yeah.
I had somebody ask for new carpet, and the carpet wasn't worn. They just didn't like the color. I'm like, wow, your agent has failed you.
Yeah.
Because it's not about, we're not doing your remodel.
Yeah.
Right? We're not paying for your cosmetic wishes. This is for repair. This is for, hey, the sellers usually don't even know. Like there's a little leak in the roof. Maybe the tar, the paper, the felt under the tiles has worn because there's two tiles that cracked that you couldn't see and you weren't aware of. Yeah. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be perfect. So that's where I think a lot of emotions rise. It can be really sticky.
Yeah.
On that, because it's a second set of negotiations. You've already negotiated the house. Now you're going to negotiate the repairs.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of deals fall through.
Yeah. Well, I think you start to get a really good understanding of what the house's current condition is in those. And it's easy to, especially if you're already feeling like, if you're somebody that tends to have the underlying emotions or thoughts, like the real, the housing market's overvalued, or gee, I'm paying so much for this house. I'm paying, $500,000 for this house. Yeah. It better be perfect. You're going to have a really hard time behaviorally and emotionally just looking at the home inspection report, because any home that's used and been lived in and has been around and is in southern Utah, by the way, with like soils issues all over the place, there's going to be
and sun.
Yeah. Like there's going to be stuff that comes up. What you're looking for in that home inspection is, like someone to guide you through and say, this is beyond the scope of what you should be considering for risk. Like this has major issues. Yeah. And look, as your agent, we probably need to say something like, it's time to just walk away from this one. Yeah. Or just saying, hey, you know what? It all looks pretty good, but the heater on the pool isn't working right. So we can ask them to get the, mechanicals kind of fixed ahead of time. Right. Yeah. Like that's something reasonable.
It is reasonable. And it also kind of depends on the situation of the buyer. Yeah. Like I just had 2 84-year-olds bought a home down here to get out of the snow. Yeah. And the only problem with the house was 2 hose bibs. They were actively leaking. Yeah. So that we could whack that out. Those are 2. It's a $5 part replacement on each one, $10
a couple
fix.
$100 for a plumber to come out.
But he was not feeling well. And she's 84, and I'm like, we're going to take care of that, Yeah. So it just kind of depends on the situation, because I represented the seller. Yeah. But it depends on what it is and why it is and what they're asking for. Like the new carpet example. No, we're not putting in new carpet.
But what's really interesting about that example? Going back to everything's a negotiation. Yeah. If you have a buyer that is maybe going to be short on cash after closing, right? Like they want to do as little as cash into the deal, but they really do want new carpet. They theoretically could come and set up a negotiation between the agents to say, hey, I could maybe put in more non-refundable earnest money for the cost of the carpet, but I want you to do it. And then we'll kind of include that back in the purchase price. So that way it's more or less financing the mortgage.
Oh,
and I can get more of my money back. Because I can get my earnest money back at closing, right? There's nothing that says I can't get it back. Right. The lenders aren't going to have an issue with that. But if I don't want to, right. So if my goal is to have $10,000 in my bank account after closing, right. And I don't want to go pay for new carpet right away.
Right.
There is ways to handle those negotiations between buyers and sellers to say, hey, let's figure out how to get this in a deal so it's a win-win for everyone, right?
Right. So they don't have to come up with money after the closing.
Right. So they don't have to come up with money after the closing. But, so you have to think of things through the lens of the other party, right? So if you're saying, well, I promise I'm going to buy the house. Would you please put $5,000 in new carpet in? And they go, yeah, right. What if you don't sell and the first carpet was fine? Now I'm stuck with a change out in carpet that added no value to me.
Right.
But if somebody says, but hey, I'll give you $5,000 more of non-refundable money. So if I back out, you got the $5,000.
Yeah, you can cover that.
Hey, all of a sudden that becomes like you're just bringing two parties together for what works well. And good agents understand how to have those conversations. And I say good agents, I know you know how to have those conversations.
Yeah.
With the opposite agent or parties, right?
Well, and it's also different. Like if the dog has scratched up the carpet and it's shredded, it's a repair item.
You know what?
Then we would expect to replace carpet.
If it's not super bad though, I have a carpet guy in town that can repair those flawlessly.
Seriously,
so good.
Oh, I need that contact.
Yeah, Brian.
That would be good.
Brian Butis, Beast Carpet Cleaning.
Okay.
Does carpet repair and his patches look great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good to know. I need that in my toolbox.
Yeah, I'll share his contact with you. Okay, so what about all the other? So that's home inspection, right? That's like home inspection and getting past that. But there's a couple other like due diligence items that are big. What else do you look for in due diligence when you're representing buyers?
Yeah, so when you're going through, I think first of all, you want to have that conversation. You want to future pace people before they get to that point.
Okay.
Because I think once we're under the legal confines of the contract, that just kind of spikes up the energy, right? Like we have until here to get this done, and So if we're doing this at the buyer consult, we're saying, here's what we can anticipate.
Yeah.
Here's what's typical, especially first-time home buyers. They're going to do what you said.
Yeah.
Hey, fix it all. I'm paying all this money. I need it all fixed. And it's not always a repair. It's maybe cosmetic, whatever. I hate your backsplash or whatever.
Yeah.
So, so you want to make sure that you've talked about it before you go into it so that people anticipate what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And then also a good home inspector will invite you and the clients to walk through at the end of the home inspection.
Yeah.
So they can walk through, they can see, they can hear it from a third party that doesn't have a horse in the race, and he can, or she can explain, here's why I said this. This is why this will be in the report. You'll see a picture of this. And a good home inspector, I think, is really good at also talking clients through that.
Yeah.
Because if they get a big laundry list of things, remember, it's the home inspector's job to point out everything.
Yeah.
And so they do. It doesn't mean that he's recommending to get everything done.
Yeah.
So if we talk about that beforehand and then they get the list and then we walk through it, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
And I think too, in those negotiations, talking about repairs, that we slow down. That would be my main thing with negotiations, because I've seen people lose the house that they wanted over wanting a $200 repair that the seller refused to do. And then they dug in their heels and hackles went up, and now it's about who's going to win, and the ego gets involved, and you're like, let's get that out of there, because in the end, everybody loses.
Yep.
We don't want that. So I think if you're dealing with buyers that are wanting maybe more than you anticipate the seller will do, or maybe, are getting kind of nitpicky about some things, I'm always like, okay, let's slow down. I was a teacher in my former life.
Yeah.
So I know that everybody learns some oral, some oral, some visual, tactile,
Yeah.
So I like to put it on a board, on the whiteboard in a conference room, and just say, let's slow down and look at it. Let's get all the information on the board. Because sometimes when buyers hear it said out loud,
yeah,
they go, oh, I'm making a big deal about nothing.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I'm not saying they're always doing that.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's the case where we can say, here are our options. We can either pay this $200, we can suck up that $200, or we go back to the drawing board and we start looking at houses again.
Yeah.
That's not a fun option either. And especially because they've chosen this house usually for some really relevant reasons to them. You want them to get the house.
Yeah.
So I think that's really helpful. You want an agent who knows about negotiating, who doesn't just blow over with the merest suggestion. You want somebody that's going to really represent you, but also can help you see what's the biggest picture. What's the 30,000 scope view?
Yeah.
Right. Are we going to lose this house over $200?
Yeah.
And so that we can get past that. And I think slowing down and looking at it visually on the board and talking about it, usually one of the spouses will go, yeah, Harriet, that's no big deal. Your brother-in-law does fill in the blank plumbing. He can come over and fix that, and it wouldn't even cost $200. Okay, well, you're right. And then we're fine, and we move on.
Sure.
So it's just managing people's emotions. And I think we need to expect as agents that it's a highly emotional process. People are exhausted. They're on decision overload, because usually they're also selling a home, and they're going through all their stuff and deciding, does this go to Aunt Margaret, or does this go to Habitat for Humanity, or am I chucking that? And they get exhausted. And then and if you've got one closing and another one closing, you're trying to line those up and everything has to go just perfectly. It's stressful.
Yeah.
So remember that people are in high stress. And I think agents just need to go and just go buy another home. Just go move one time and remind yourself how stressful it is. I was a basket case. I do this every day. And when I sold my home, I couldn't pull out of the driveway because I was sobbing in the driveway.
Yeah.
Good gravy. I mean, it's a lot of emotion. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to be really respectful, really empathetic about that process. It is difficult.
It is.
Yeah. It's a hard process.
It's a lot. Any other ancillary due diligence items that you're ever looking at or taking into consideration, or is it more maybe case by case? And in my head, what I'm kind of thinking is the neighborhood checks, right? Is there? Oh yeah. Hey, if you have a family that's got kids, maybe a good agent's pulling a sex offender registry for you, or helping you out with that. I don't know if that's something that you do, or helping you understand what maybe is going on with the school systems or what schools your kids would be attending, right? Talking through a couple of those things that pertain more to families.
Oh, absolutely.
Or, hey, I remember I helped someone with a deal one time, and they had there's big vacant property behind, and they said, hey, we're pretty concerned what's going to happen with that.
Yeah.
That land. I said, well, we looked it up. It's zoned R1, residential. It's going to be homes eventually. I don't know when. It's a big farm field now, but
yeah,
it was like a year later, it started developing.
Oh gosh!
But they're okay, we just want to make sure it wasn't zoned to be some mink farm, or it's going to turn into something. And I thought that's a real thing. So you have to. It is. Sometimes it's having and so what I'm saying is that awareness piece. People that know and understand the community and the county and what's going on. Hey, is there going to be some new, school 2 blocks away from you? And is that something that they would like, or is that something that would really drive the client kind of crazy? That could be good or bad.
That's exactly right.
But if you have the awareness of the community as an agent and say, hey, I'm happy you love this home, just they're building a new, county penitentiary half a block away from you, or down the street. Is that something that bothers you? That's really valuable to just have that sort of it's not really inside information, but that insider viewpoint of things, right? Because you're just connected with the community. You understand what's going on. You understand what developments are happening.
Oh
right?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many calls I've made to the county or the city to do that very thing. Yeah. What is that land? Who owns that land and what's happening with it? Right. That's a really good thing. Another thing, to your point,
I usually just call McCrae for that.
Yeah, McCrae. That's right. Yeah, right. He's the bomb. Yeah, you could do that. But I also, I recommend knocking on the door of the neighbors. Sure. And not everybody wants to do that. And I tell people, if you're comfortable, let's do it together. If you're not, I'm happy to go do it. And everybody's different, and that's fine. But I will knock and I'll just say, hey, because you're going to get the real deal. You're going to get the skinny from the neighbors.
Yeah.
And I will say, how do you like the HOA? Are there a lot of people in this pool? Do you think, I just sold a home where there was common area and then a pool and no wall.
Yeah.
It was an older home, and that's kind of how they did it back then. And I said, is this loud? She goes, I don't think I've seen 6 people in that pool all year. You're going to get the real deal from the neighbors.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's how you find out that has kept people from buying before. But boy, you sure want to know during due diligence. You don't want to know after they've sold the home.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you have vetted all of that. So yes, and that is all written, by the way, in the due diligence checklist. So buyers have that list they can look up the sex offender registry. They can do some of that on their own, but absolutely we hop in there as agents and find that out. And it's typically that land issue, what's around me, and the knocking on the door, who's my neighbor.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
Yeah. Sometimes the only way to know the answer to those things is to know the developers, though, and know who owns commercial property around town and really what's going on. Because it's not always public information.
No, it isn't. I'm doing one right now where I'm just calling and calling and calling. And then somebody tells me so-and-so might know and so-and-so might know. And it's a lot of research. It's a lot of investigating.
Yep.
But it's worth it because you want your clients to get the right spot.
Yeah.
Right? You want them to be happy with what they end up getting, for sure.
There's the right home and then there's the right spot. And those two things aren't always the same thing. But you want both things. Right?
Yeah. How many times have I heard people say, I wish I could just pick up this house and put it on that lot?
Technologically, you can do that. It happens in the Midwest quite a bit where I grew up. I've seen it.
Really?
But it also can be a big disaster because it can go wrong and just be the biggest pain. But I've seen that was my grandpa when after he retired, he had built homes in his career, and then he worked. He actually retired as the director of housing and urban development in Wisconsin, and so he was very familiar with the building process and project management. And he would just help people for fun, really almost act as their general contractor, just doing projects. Something to do, and provide some service to people that maybe needed it. And there was one that I watched. It was a home that they had cut in half and transported.
Oh my word!
It was a couple cities over. It was not 2 blocks or something. It was this was a major, but it was a sentimental home to the family. It was I want to say it was something like the grandparents' house or something, kind of thing. But they wanted it on this other new corner lot, and it was gonna. Anyway, so they had to develop the whole lot and then bring it in, and they were going to put it on a new basement. So it wasn't just slab on grade, this isn't moving a trailer down the street, right? This is
an engineering feat.
Yes. And it was, in hindsight, this is probably a 2,000 square foot house. Is not a small, you know what I mean? This is not just a, little pioneer shack or something. This is a house. And it was supposed to be a couple month project, right? Get the lot build ready, put the basement in, bring it in, slap it on top, bolt it together, done.
Yeah.
It was 4 years.
Oh my gosh.
It was a long, I remember going out with my grandpa in the winter to go out and break the ice up around the stuff, the pump that was pumping the water out of the basement, as snow would melt, and fill up this basement with water because they hadn't gotten the house on top yet and sealed it in all correctly. It was, so it can be done if somebody really wants. I want this house, but this lot.
I've seen it on the freeway.
You can do it. It is just, it is a lot, and it does not typically make any fiscal sense.
No, would not recommend it.
But anyways, so long
Getting
story.
the right house on the right place is what we need.
Yep. Typically a lot easier to just work with a really highly qualified agent that can help you find a place that works and a home that works, right? And
understands the demographics, because I think that's really important to people too. We get a lot of people, about, 40% of our market comes from the Salt Lake area. And a lot of those are retirees or people that are going to retire at some point to the home down here. They want to use it as a second home, and eventually will sell the home up north and come down here. And so they really want to get the demographics right. And a lot of them will say, we love kids. We have 5 of our own and 27 grandchildren, but we just don't want to live in a neighborhood that has, trampolines and basketball hoops, and it's noisy with kids, And so we have a lot of neighborhoods like that. And conversely, I don't want to take a family with young kids and plop them in the middle of like my neighborhood. It's not a 55 plus, but that's the demographic.
Yeah.
So I think that's what a good agent helps you find. What's the demographic and why? And outdoor sports enthusiasts, I've got, like bicyclists, they want to be on that north corridor going up St. George by the Snow Canyon because they want all the trails, know. It's really listening to people to know what they want, what their lifestyle is like. Do they have children? Do they not? Do they have animals? Do they not?
Yeah.
And why? And really listening and finding that for them. And then also, I think being a good buyer's agent means getting out and going to all those new developments. We get new construction invitations from all the builders. Come out. Our new subdivision is opening. Come Saturday and check it out. Or just do that on your own and go out and just get out and see it. Because it is crazy how much new construction is going on.
Yeah.
I'm out in it 6 days a week and I still get surprised at how much is going on, like out in Long Valley, and holy moly, it's just everywhere.
I worked on the Long Valley project before D.R. Horton bought it.
Oh, really?
And I was just, when I first saw that project and kind of came into that, I was shocked. I was like, I'm like, you're putting that many homes where?
I know. I was like, that's so far out there.
And I was out there like working on the survey with stuff and looking at everything. And I'm like, this is going to be crazy. And then I was like, they're like, yeah, we're going to start the project and like it should break ground in like 2022 or 2023. And then all of a sudden one day they're like, D.R. Horton bought the whole thing. It's happening like now, and then it was like boom. And then it was like boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden there's like homes out there. And I live right off Washington Dam Road. Yeah.
Oh, do you?
Mm-hmm. So all that traffic goes like past my.
No, yeah. Yes, it will.
But anyways, it's amazing. But then even the subset of what's going on out there is kind of always changing in the phases and stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. It's been interesting to watch.
Yeah. S&S is out there, Redwater's, Ents.
Oh,
all
yeah.
of those
Ents
new
over on the other
developments
side of the
there.
river.
Yeah. But it's everywhere. It's in Ivins, it's in Washington, it's all over the place. And I have people that have like, I grew up in St. George, and they come back to visit, or they come back to move here and they can't wrap their head around it. So different.
So my dad served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the 80s. And we're from Wisconsin. He was assigned to serve his mission in the Salt Lake City South mission.
Oh, wow.
And back then, St. George was part of his mission, right? Oh. And there was a couple times that he had to drive down here when he worked in the mission office in Salt Lake and pick up missionaries or whatever. And he says he remembers coming down, and it was like his two things that he remembered about it was when he did car inspections. No one ever had cars dirtier than the missionaries in Hurricane. Because it was all dirt roads, like it was like all
and windy.
No one ever had a dirtier car than the guys in Hurricane. Mm-hmm. And St. George, he said it was just like you would just kind of come and drop in, and it was just what he calls like down in the bowl, like downtown St. George, right? It was just the boulevard. It's kind of the stuff south of the boulevard mostly, and that was like really
that was it.
And now objectively we know like there was some stuff further down in like Bloomington and stuff, but it was very sparse back then. It was very sparse back then.
Oh yeah.
And now he comes back to town, and he's like, just can't believe it. He's like, this was like not even a blip on the radar.
No.
And
this was our pit stop when we lived in Southern Cal, and we had our business headquarters were up in the Provo area. Mm-hmm. This was halfway. But you drive through, and now it's changed, but you used to drive through, and it was just kind of dilapidated homes, and we would get off and, hit the Maverick and gas up, and off we'd go. And I'd think, who would live in this desert wasteland? And I love it. It's so gorgeous. Because you don't see the beautiful, not all the beautiful scenery when you're just on the freeway. Yeah. You just have no idea what an incredible place it is.
Yeah.
We're so blessed to be here.
It really is. St. George is awesome. I'm glad that I get to call it home.
Yeah,
so
me too.
It was for me kind of a whim decision to move here with my wife. And we just had we'd always when we lived in northern Utah, we'd always heard like St. George was the place to retire, right? Like, and I actually had the first time I had heard that was growing up. There was someone from church that we knew growing up, and they had retired and moved out to St. George, and they, he was like into the Huntsman Senior Games and marathons, very,
very athletic,
very athletic, even in his very senior years. And so they had moved out here. And I remember my dad took my older brother for like a senior trip out to this Corvette racing school outside of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And they went and raced cars for a couple of days or whatever. And they had driven up to St. George to see this guy. And I remember him coming back and be like, man, St. George was so interesting. Like we flew in, it was just an hour and a half up the street from Vegas. And it was like just this great weather. It hadn't gotten up into like the Utah winter yet. And I went, there's a place in Utah that it like doesn't snow. And I'm like, we're from Wisconsin. I'm like, oh, I hate the snow. And then, then I moved to Utah after high school.
Mm-hmm.
We lived up in the Provo area, and everyone would always say, St. George is amazing. We love going to St. George, and everyone always wants to retire to St. George. My grandparents live in St. George now. And so when I had the chance and I was getting out of the Army, you can move anywhere. I just, it's like, it's talking to my wife, where should we go?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't we just go to everyone wants to retire to St. George. Why would we wait till I retire? Let's just move there.
Yeah. It's phenomenal.
It's great.
Well, and you stop and think about it. You're an hour and a half away from skiing.
Yeah.
You're an hour and a half, 2 hours away from big city.
Yeah.
Shopping and all of that, and all of the trails and the outdoor living. And it's just kind of the best of all worlds right here. And I think we've turned a corner. Black Desert, the resort, and also, what's his name? The actor.
Oh, Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner's
the
movie film studio.
Yeah, I think those two things, I think we are headed for big city-dom, sadly.
There is 2 other major projects that I know of that I think are going to potentially even put those to
shame.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Really?
They're big.
But they're a secret? You're not going to reveal it on the podcast?
Not on the podcast.
Darn it. All right. I'll be excited to hear that.
But if you're someone that likes golf, this will continue to be a interesting community for you. Black Desert is beautiful.
Oh my word.
PGA course. Anyways, there's a lot to do. We love our community. People probably are sick of hearing about it at this point. But
it's great.
Yeah,
we welcome you.
Anyways, I think that so to just kind of recap the whole conversation here.
Yeah.
Less our gloating of our, extreme blessedness to live in St. George.
Yes.
Is if you're looking to buy a house, don't wait too long. Have a financial plan in place.
Yes.
All right. Get somebody that can help you understand how much you should put down and what you should do with the rest of your money, how to really hold on to that long-term and integrate it into a long-term financial plan, right?
Yes.
Understand the long-term decisions of what you're doing.
Right.
And then obviously find a great lending partner. And I've done podcasts with good lending partners that people can go back and listen to.
Yep.
And then have a good buy-side representation on that, so they can help you understand the due diligence items, help you do the due diligence items and see them from a unique angle. And they can get you the representation that you need and deserve. So that way you can have a deal that comes together and is in your best interest and, works for you long-term.
Absolutely. And one thing just on the heels of that, I think some agents don't help get those estimates on repairs, because sellers will always underestimate what they cost and buyers will always overestimate. It's just how we are as humans. And so going and getting those estimates for the repairs that you actually do want, having a great, little black book of good vendors and contractors is so key as a realtor, and to be able to call them and have them come out, give estimates so that when you ask for repairs, you're not overestimating, you're not offending. You're saying, here's an estimate from XYZ Roofing. Here's the estimate from the plumbing.
Yeah.
And we're asking for, $1,100 toward repair costs.
Yeah.
Then that goes a long way, other than just saying, we're guesstimating about $2,000,
Sure.
We're going to back it up. And so I think a good agent is going to do all that legwork for you.
A lot of legwork.
Yep.
Good agents do the legwork, and
they
do the things that you aren't aware need to be done.
Yep.
Don't have the time to do or wouldn't want to do, but they all need to be done. for you to have really the best shot at the most successful outcome.
A buyer's agent should be taking as much stress and hassle out of that process as is humanly possible.
Yep.
Yep. Serving you every step along the way. A good buyer's agent needs to have a servant's heart, right? They need to be in it for that.
Yeah.
If you've got somebody that's in it for the money, they shouldn't be in it.
Well,
I mean, we all have to make a living. We all want it. It's not a charity thing we're doing, but it really needs to be client-centric or it's not going to be successful.
Well, I think the most successful people are client-centric.
Yep. No matter what industry. Absolutely.
Anyways, well, I appreciate you taking the time and hopping on today.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.